I'm Miguel Foze, and I'm going to, well, mostly just going to be me ranting, uh, describing what my life is like with like depression and whatnot, and how I think a lot of people actually get interpret what depression really is wrong, and some things I do to keep my managed, and stuff like that. Uh, I guess as a first qualification, no, I have not ever actually gotten it fully diagnosed. I have not gone to a therapist. I have not. I'm not on any medication. I have it sort of self-managed, and the main way I have it self-managed is I have learned to look for the signs for when I am getting bad, and as soon as I get notice those signs, I'm just simply not allowed to listen to myself. I'll be sort of like the, oh, you should go kill yourself. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll get right on that. And then just keep doing what I'm doing. I think one of the biggest things people sort of mistake is this notion of like depression is just you being sad. It's like, no, not really. I'm sure for some it might be, but I'm not really so much sad. Like, it's more what my brain naturally wants to focus on rather than uh, what the brains of most people focus on. Like, one of the ways I think it's a good description of it is uh, there is a uh, psychological term called the self-serving bias, which is anything that is uh, positive for you or your in group is seen as is internalized, and anything that is bad for you or your in group is externalized. Let me describe what that means. If you did really well on a test, you will ascribe it to your being smart or you studied really well. These are internal qualities. They are intrinsic to you're the reason you did well on the test. Whereas if you did badly on the test, you'll attribute to like, well, it was unlucky, the test was just too hard, the teacher really hates me. You are externalizing what is going on. You're attributing to something that is not you as the reason for why bad things happen to you. I think for a lot of people with depression, this is reversed. This sort of mental mentality is reversed. So if something good happens to them, they are unwilling to accept that they are responsible for their own benefit because they do not think they have this mentality that they are horrible, horrible people. Well, not horrible, horrible people, but it's like, no, it's not so much of, oh, hey, my life is worse than normal. It's just I'm weaker than everyone else. and their lives are just as bad as me. I just cannot, I'm not strong enough to handle it like they can. Stuff like that. They aren't, a lot of people with depression, they're not trying to say, oh, hey, my life is miserable. I, I've had the worst upbringing ever. It's like, no, it's more a matter of, well, because we rationalize, but we rationalize things different. Like I said, it's an inversion of the self-serving bias that when something goes bad, it's because you are a horrible person, you are a screw up, you are a failure at life. And it is very difficult for when something actually goes your way for you to internalize it. That it's, oh, hey, the test came out really easy, or I did really well on the test. It's like, well, I have this unreasonable expectation that's like, I cannot see myself as being better than average because I don't feel better than average. I feel worthless. And therefore, the only reason I could have done well is because the test was easy or I got lucky. Like I said, it's an inversion of the looking glass self-serving bias. And for me specifically, this even applies to the notion of friends. My mind cannot rationalize that anyone actually likes me. It simply cannot. It I don't know how else to really describe it. It's like I said, it's an internalized uh it's a inversion of the self-serving bias. If someone is being mean to me, I interpret it as something that's my fault. That I deserve for people to be mean to because I am a horrible, horrible person. Whereas, oh, if someone's being nice to me, my first instinct is they either want something for me or they feel guilty about me, which of course makes me feel guilty about them being nice to me. It's and yet at the same time, it's you sort of want to be acknowledged. You want validation. You want people to sort of that know you're not a fuck up, that you're not a screw up, you're not some horrible, horrible person, that you are doing good. But it's you still have that part of your mind that's like you cannot, it's very difficult for you to rationalize that that is actually praise. Your brain wants to rationalize that, oh, they're only being nice, they're only coddling you, but you still need that because you still need the validation that you are not as bad as you think you are, which is mostly what it is. You need someone to disprove your own mental image, which is why a lot of people with depression can probably become rather needy, especially to people whose opinions they value, because it's like, well, I need you to constantly be proving to me that I'm disproving my own mental image that I keep reinforcing on myself because I interpret everything I do as negative, as internal. On top of that, because a secondary effect of this is, of course, the fact that because everything we do that's good is externalized, we don't really keep track of our accomplishments. it is very difficult to like, oh, I did this, this, and this. Instead, when we think about our past, the thing we focus on are the things that have been internalized. So we're focusing on all of the things that we have done bad. So it's like, oh, I am a horrible, horrible person because of all these things I screwed up, all the friends I ba- uh, be- feel like I betrayed, even though they probably don't even remember it. All the times where I lied to my friend, said something to someone who thought me their friend, and I lied to them, and now I feel guilty despite the fact the lie was completely of no consequence. And it's like, yeah, we obsess about the negative aspect of our own lives because those are considered to be internal characteristics of ourselves. Whereas positive things, it's like, well, why would I? Oh, remember that time I got lucky on that test? Like, you're not going to really put much memory into it. You're not going to put much focus because it's, after all, it's not my fault I did pass that test. The test was just easy. If people like me, they only like me because they feel guilty for me. Whereas if, actually, I want to rotate the body forward. If they feel guilty for me, so why should I pay much attention to things that'll only make me feel guilty about myself because they feel guilty about me? In- Instead, let's focus on all of the things that I have done that are negative. And so again, it's this sort of self-reinforcing thing. It's like I'm a horrible person because I cannot see anything good about myself. And because I cannot see anything good about myself, the only things I really pay attention to are all the things that sort of prove that I am a horrible, horrible person. It's definitely an unending cycle. It is definitely unhealthy. And there's no real two ways about it. It's like, no, it's you need to find a way to deal with your own head, or else you're gonna never recover. You're probably gonna end up killing yourself. And if you know someone who is like this, the best, most important thing you can do for them is just be there. Don't get mad at them. Don't, as weird as it is in some regards, don't be the sort of, no, don't enable them. That's the most important thing. Don't enable their sort of need for validation, their need for to sort of self deprecate themselves in a way, but just be there. If anything, I think the best way to sort of pull them out of it to make sure they don't is find some way for them to feel like you depend on something they do. Find something they do good at, and then just constantly be requiring them to provide that for you. Like if they're good at art, well, start talking about art. Find out what things they do still like, and just keep talking about it. Or try and get them to do a comic. Like, okay, I like do it an arrangement. It's like, okay, I'll write the comic and you draw it for me. I don't care how bad it looks. This will be fun. It'll be something we can do together. And if you get into this mentality where, as mean as it is to them, if it's I'm letting you down, they do well. You can't overwork them. If you overwork them, yeah, that's going to burn them out, and that's going to be worse. But if it's like it's something small that they can do, it's not going to overwork them. It's going to get to the point that they feel they will be a failure if they're not doing this for you, which of course obviously also means they're going to be a little bit less likely to do massive damage to them, massive harm to themselves, because if they do that, they aren't just letting themselves down, they're letting you down. So you're going to effectively be guilt tripping them into taking care of themselves. That is, like I said, it's kind of mean, but that's probably the best way to handle it. Is you need to guilt trip them into taking care of themselves, to trying to become better, to try and do better. Just guilt trip them to such a state that if they aren't trying to improve, if they aren't trying to live their life and be a contributing member of society, you make them feel more guilty trying to self wallow than any sort of self punishment they would get on their own failures. So if it's like, nah, I don't care about that, you still owe me this, they will do that regardless. And it'll probably be, well, it might make them a nervous wreck if anything goes wrong. Like, but it's like, yeah, you gotta understand, yeah, they're gonna probably be a nervous wreck. You gotta understand that. But you gotta also at the same time keep them out of their own heads. Now, bit more personal than normally I would do, but it's like, okay, how has this affected my life? Uh, I'll admit, I was what like most people who are into like the anther stuff and whatnot. I was bullied when I was a kid. Well, indirectly. The way I was bullied is very different from what most people would really consider to be bullied. I wasn't the person that, oh, hey, everyone avoided, or I wasn't the one that everyone was like, oh, hey, yeah, the bullies that would constantly be attacking, picking on, mailing insults at. No, I was the kind of person who, no, I want nothing to do with you, go away. And throughout all of elementary school, I had one friend, only one. He was the only person that ever actually cared to be around me. No one else. And yeah, I probably did get a little bit codependent on him at times, but that stuff unfortunately happens. But I didn't actually really consider myself to be depressed. It's just a matter of it's like, okay, this is life. the Minnesota passive aggressive bullying where it's like, no, I'm not actually going to hit you or call you names. I'm just going to ignore your very existence. And that's what I grew up with. I was also an extremely weird kid, so that probably didn't help matters. And then seventh grade, family actually moved down to Missouri. So left all the friend I had and went to Missouri to a completely new state where I didn't know anyone there. And I was used to the notion that no one wanted anything to do with me, so I didn't really bother doing anything with them. I was just kind of off in my own world. I did have some people I would talk to that lived nearby and whatnot, but yeah, no, the hands suck. But point is more of a fast drawing. But it's like, yeah, that was junior high, and then it's like not, and that wasn't even for a year. We actually moved right back up to Minnesota like 6 months later. But because of where I was, well, I was in a different school than the one friend I had. So it's like, again, it was a matter of it's like, I could not see for life of me of anyone wanting anything to do with me, but I was still participating. Like I was a band geek. I would definitely say I was a band geek. I was in like the fall musicals they would do. I was the jazz band, the marching band. But it's like, yeah, these were people to hang out with, but I do not actually feel any of them actually cared about me at all. We talk about things, but it's a matter of I was only just there to be, they were only talking to me to be polite, stuff like that. I'm sure there were a few people that were trying to pull me out of my shell, but it's like I was apparently wasn't having it. Uh, I'm actually gonna copy his. Reference. And it wasn't until college that I actually realized that, yeah, I was depressed and it was actually kind of a liberating thing because knowing what I was meant I had a lot better of an understanding on how to deal with it. That I knew then that it wasn't that's like, oh, I'm a horrible, horrible person. It's because, well, my mind is funky, my mind is screwed up, and I was able to start sort of managing it. And like I said, it's like what I would do is oh, hey, I noticed what my triggers were, stress being a major one of them. Actually, I'm okay with putting this one over it and then just low. I learned what my triggers were, how to identify them, and whenever I noticed one of my triggers, I would just adopt the mentality of, okay, I'm going into this. There's no way to just say, okay, block it. In fact, there are times I actively choose to allow myself to become depressed, to get into an episode, because it's like, well, I am not sad. I'm just normally not feeling much of anything. And having something that's like, oh, hey, I can feel something for like a couple hours. I'll actually just sort of wallow it. I'll try and make it as bad as possible. I will intentionally go about trying to make my mood as bad as possible. I will try and make myself cry. And not just so much, oh, hey, fake cry. It's like, no, I will try and bring myself to tears. I will try and mentally torture myself to try and get my mental state to be as bad as possible. But I do it knowing full well I am not allowed to listen to anything I say. I want to do this. Sorry, not allowed. Like, it's like, yeah, I can do that. I can feel bad. I can basically wallow in all that stuff, but it's like, I'm just not allowed to listen to myself. Oh, I should delete all my work because I'm never going to make it. I should just stop trying. I should quit the internet. No one cares about me. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. And then I'm not allowed. And then once the day is over, once everything has been said and done and I'm out of it, which in some regards actually feels really good because well, it's mentally exhausting, but it's sort of cathartic. And that's a matter of you let all your emotions out, you let it fully deal everything it's going to do. And then you go on with your life. You're back to, well, relative normal for you. It's not necessarily great, but you're at least back to a semblance of normal. And then I can go along, go on with my day. Because it's a matter of I've gone through it and I'm good. And usually, the worse it is, unless I'm really under stress, I can go quite a while before I need to, before I'll go again. Because it's like, well, it's mentally exhausting. And I just like, yeah, that's just how I do things. It's like, I will say though, in some regards, the furry fandom I don't think is really a great place for people with like this because, well, I'm just gonna move this down over to here. Yeah, the furry fandom attracts people with mental illness because it attracts the people who feel like outsiders, which means you are going to get a lot more people that have dealt with depression, dealt with like Asperger's syndrome, bunch of other stuff. But at the same time, it is really bad in that I have not found, well, it's the sort of pseudo open to other being open to how to describe this, is open to a diversity of, it is very, whoever wants to be a furry, the furry fandom will appreciate you, it will embrace you, it'll welcome you. At the same time, it is extremely close-minded when it comes to anyone that disagrees with them. I really should make my eraser smaller. And they are extremely close-minded about their own opinions. That is something I've definitely noticed. They have their opinions and they will not budge on it. And I have actually seen quite a few who it's like, you're either with us or you're the enemy, and I will not even listen to any argument you have to say. I'll just keep repeating my own argument, which is very annoying for someone who actually likes debate, likes discussion, has an open minded thing, and doesn't just trust what everyone tells them. And so there are many times where it's like, okay, I have this mentality that's sort of being brought up from the furry fandom where it's like, no, I am clearly defective because I don't think the way they do. I do not feel I can be open because I am different. I am not part of like, I do not share the same mentality. That they, it's like, no, it's the sort of, I do not share the same effectively religion as a lot of the furry fandom. Therefore, I do not feel like I can belong. Okay, I think I should still be the little bit of a nose. But anyway, I guess that'll be all I can think of for now. I might do another video somewhat like this later. Thank you for watching. Until next time.